Welcome to Scott Bryson Beyond the Service. Today I'm super excited to welcome a good friend of mine, Carl Higbie. If you don't know who Carl Higbie is, you've probably been living under a rock. He's a former Navy SEAL and I guess a host or an anchor, I'm not sure, he'll correct me, on Newsmax. Carl, welcome to the show, buddy.
Hey man, thanks for having me on.
Hey, it's good to see you. Carl and I met in, I think, 2017 when I was the detail leader for Eric Trump. He and Eric are good buddies. And I can remember meeting him out in the woods. He was running a chainsaw, and it scared me to death because I was having visions of cut femurs with Mr. Trump. So I was a little worried. I wasn't worried about Carl. I was worried about E.T. doing something crazy. So
hold on. Can we talk about what actually happened that day?
Sure.
Because I stepped on a ground beehive, and you guys all let me get eaten alive by bees to protect your guy, while you, like, 6 of you rushed him away, and I'm getting stung up the ass from bees. And I'm just looking at you guys. I'm like, hey, thanks.
Honestly, I'm sure you remember that because it happened to you. I don't remember that, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, you guys rushed him like away from me down the hill. It was pretty funny. I got stung like 100 times.
I always worried about the crazy stuff that he would do. We spent a lot of time at the range over at Campfire. And then out in Montana, we'd go hunting. I was always worried about Mother Nature more than I was, the boogeyman, I guess, with that guy.
Or himself.
Yeah. I don't know. You didn't go to Montana with us. I know you went to Louisiana, but we went to Montana, and I kidded him because they were out and they killed an elk. And it was getting dark, and I had to ride a 4-wheeler like 8 miles out into the country, and then we had to walk a mile. And I told him I needed a life-saving award, but I never got one.
Ah, man, Eric's the best. He's some of the best stories.
I love that guy. I made him. He's like, I'm driving. I'm like, you're not driving crap. And I made him get on the back of the 4-wheeler, and then he put his rifle between us. And he goes, hey, don't get excited. That's just my rifle.
People are always shocked that he's actually like one of the most normal people in the way. He's also like a genuinely good person. Like, there's a lot of people out there that play good on TV. Eric's actually like a genuinely good guy.
No, he is. He's the best. I told him, I interviewed him on here a few months ago, and I kissed his butt a little bit. When I wasn't really kissing his butt, I was just telling the truth. It's like he's one of the nicest human beings I've ever met. And what you see on camera is what you get off camera. He's awesome.
Yeah.
So, hey, I just wanted to jump in. I know we're kind of pushed for time today. I just wanted to jump in, and this will be a little unorthodox from what we normally do in light of what's been happening.
That's my middle name, bro.
Well, in my family, we like to say we put the fun in dysfunctional, so that's why you and I get along so well. But yeah, I just want to get your take on what's happened with, obviously, I think we kind of know what happened in New Orleans. We could talk about that if you want to, but I'm more interested in this Green Beret situation out in Vegas. What's your take on that? Did you watch the interview with Sam and Sean yesterday?
I did, actually. And Sean Ryan, I was telling you, was supposed to be on my show, but he had to cancel last minute to do that interview.
Okay.
Sean and I, we've become pretty good friends over the years, and we didn't know each other in the teams or anything like that. But, there's, I'm not sure about 100% of all the stuff in that his guest was alleging, but a lot of it seems legit. A lot of it seems like super legit. And, I did a segment on my show the other day where I was talking about the fact that, like, why is there more data dumped about this guy in 2 hours than we have on either of the people who shot at Trump?
Right.
Whether it was Crooks or Ruth.
Yep.
And also, there's this guy suspiciously, like, seemed like a fine guy, like, a MAGA guy, loved the military, patriotic, had a kid, and all this stuff. And he just so happens to shoot himself in the head in a way that would deny anybody getting any type of dental records. Mm-hmm. And also be burnt alive so far beyond recognition in a car where his ID, his plastic military ID, and his paper passport also survived. Right. So the fire was so hot that it melted the .50 caliber gun barrel that he allegedly shot himself in the head with. Right. And look, I'm not a conspiracy guy, but something's not adding up here, and I want to know why. And I think people know, but like that email, the fact that email was corroborated by multiple people, it had been sent to multiple people to try to get the daylight on it, and this guy's alleging some pretty heavy stuff. Yeah. And they always say, like, oh, well, in the interest of national security and stuff like this. But the other thing is, the FBI can say the two are not related. They may not; those two guys might not know each other, but they are 100% related in some way.
Yeah.
Because the similarities between the same rental car company, both at Fort Bragg, both deployed to Afghanistan around the same time. Like there are some similarities here that need to be investigated beyond anything else. The other, and I'll lastly say this is, in this whole time, the Jenny Tare was able to go into the New Orleans shooter's house that allegedly had the door kicked in. I mean, she put a video out of it. She just walked into something that was a crime scene with chemicals still sitting out on benches. No one was guarding it. Yeah. And all of a sudden, because that came out, the FBI took back over the house. Like, either this is the least organized FBI we've ever seen, or there's something up.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't really want to go down this little rabbit hole, but since we're talking about the Bureau for just a brief second. Well, it's not the main point. I got a big chuckle, and it was horrible to think it's funny, but the FBI agent didn't know what a V-bid was. I was like, bro, really?
Yeah. Well, when I heard that part, and I'm like, this is the FBI. And look, I have family in the FBI. I know a lot of FBI agents that are phenomenal people that do work that I couldn't or ever want to do.
Yeah.
And yet there are some people there that I'm like, yeah, I mean, we just found out, Scott, like a couple months ago, that the FBI was actually hiring people that were illiterate because they fit a diversity quota.
Yeah. Well, one of my neighbors when I lived in Virginia was an HRT guy, super squared away. That unit's, I think that unit's top notch. I don't know if you've ever worked with them in the past, but HRT, they're squared away. So it's never the boots on the ground. We've talked about this when I was on your show. I'd like to think I wasn't the part of the problem. I made it to middle management at best, and I always I believed in the one team, one fight mentality, but once you get to a certain echelon, it's like, I don't know if these guys have lobotomies or what happens, but it's just like, like Sean and Sam were talking about the PAO. The PAO is not there for the troops. He's there for the command. And just like when I was with the Secret Service, the legal division was not there for me. I had to be a member of FLIOLA, right? FLIOLA took care of me. Yeah. The legal division was going to take care of the service. And so we shouldn't be surprised when we see these things. It's very disheartening.
Yeah. And the other thing with all this stuff is, the PAO, why would he, look, public affairs officers don't disclose things as, right, hey, buddy, old pal, just between me and you. Yeah. That's like me going to CNN and saying, like, hey, just between me and you, there's this breaking story. Yeah. But don't do anything with it. It's between me and you. Yeah, right. That's going to last about 7.5 seconds.
Right. Well, I mean, I think to their point, and this is where we can talk, I can speak a little more freely on this platform because it's on YouTube, but I have to be super careful when I'm talking on TikTok because my videos are getting suppressed. But you start going down these what if rabbit holes, and you're called a conspiracy theorist. No, I'm just a free thinker, and I'm putting, 2 + 2 is never going to be 5. So what are you talking about? It's like the whole point that they're trying to say, oh, well, this guy got depressed. And I'm not saying Green Berets don't get depressed. They do. But this wasn't some willy-nilly fly by the seat of your pants operation. I think this guy was playing chess while everybody else was playing checkers. I'm just not sure. I think the guy could still be alive. I don't know.
That's the thing is we don't know, and we should know. We deserve to know. But the other thing too is a big standalone factor, and I was talking about this with some people the other day. Being that in a previous life, I knew a thing or two about explosives. Like anybody who gets any type of special forces training is going to know the basics. That a can of gasoline doesn't explode. Vapors from gasoline explode, but also if you're trying to inflict damage or something like that, what he did is not going to cause the damage that would have led. Like, look, Scott, you and I both know that he could have done exponentially more damage with a bomb if he wanted to. But the fact is that he didn't makes me guess about a whole bunch of things.
Well, exactly. The fact that, my son and I were talking about this the day it happened, and he's like, this is a bunch of fireworks if this guy was a Green Beret, which we didn't know at the time that if he was still active, but we know that he was, or, he was active. This guy squared away, knows what he's doing. You're not just going to throw that's just so rudimentary, right? That's something that a layperson out on the street would do.
At a very minimum, Scott, you would cut the gunpowder out of the
Yeah.
fireworks and make your own thing. I mean, you could go to Bass Pro Shop and buy enough gunpowder to make a big boom. You could go to Home Depot with Ampho. You could use vapor gasoline. Like if you had just dumped gasoline in the car, just the vapors alone would have been a massive explosion.
Yeah, I mean, tannerite would have done more damage. I mean, it's stupid. But, like I think part of the thing that I find interesting is, and I've kind of been all over the place with this thing.
The other thing, too, while we're talking about the fact conspiracy theories, is, like most of the conspiracy theories over the last few years are not theories anymore. They're fact. Like, masks don't work.
Right.
Okay. We have a significant number, like the vaccines never stopped the spread.
Right.
COVID was not worse than the flu.
Yeah.
And, it did come from a Chinese Wuhan, China virology lab.
Yeah.
You have, I mean, pick one. Why is the attacker who broke into Nancy Pelosi's home in jail for almost life, like 25 or something like that?
Yeah.
Like all these things, we keep asking these questions. Where's the Epstein client list? Where's the Diddy list? Like you can go down the list of any of these things, and it turns out that they're all the people that are asking the questions that are accused of wearing a tinfoil hat turn out to be right.
Yeah. Well, I know I've heard Bongino say it before, and I've said it too, kind of jokingly. We're going to have to come up with some new conspiracy theories because all the old ones are coming true. I was in the extreme minority when I was with the service. I was stationed in Honolulu when COVID broke out. And out of a 20-man office, there was only 2 of us that did not take the jab. And I was a supervisor at the time, but the special agent in charge was really leaning hard on me. And it got so bad. First of all, Hawaii is extremely liberal. They're going to do everything California does. So the squeeze was on. I actually ended up asking for demotion to get back to the East Coast just so I could retire. I was already eligible to retire, but I had to wait it out for a year for the mobility agreement, But they really put the screws to me. And it's like you feel vindicated in a way, but it's like I didn't want to. There's sometimes I don't want to be right. Like I wanted it to work, Like when Trump was in office and he was calling it Operation Warp Speed, I'm like, okay, let's go. But I just needed some more time to gather some information. And then when Biden and Kamala got in and they said it went from the worst thing ever to the best thing ever, as soon as they politicized it, I was out.
Yeah, well, that's the thing too. Is like, look, of course, I root for America. I'm long in America. Like I root for America to win, but especially with this thing, like when the vax came out, I was like, you know what? Sure, like I'll consider it. Let me look into it. So I asked my doctor, and I was like, what are the pros and cons? They were like, just take it. And I'm like, long-term studies? No. Okay. I was like, I'll just wait it out. See if I need it. I've already had COVID at that point, and I was fine.
Yeah.
So I was like, but it's the same thing with everything. When the government spends more time telling you you're wrong on any topic, Las Vegas considered too. When they spend more time telling us things that don't add up and less time actually being truthful with us, I'm like, guys, like, you want more questions or not? Like, in a world where everybody's got a video camera, everybody's got a podcast, everybody's got an access to Twitter and a mouthpiece and international statements on a platform, this stuff's not going to stay hidden forever.
No. So speaking of staying hidden, the drone talk just kind of went away. Everybody was up in arms about the drones for about a week, and then all of a sudden it went radio silent. And then this guy's come forward with not only the war crimes accusations from 2019, but also some of the, I call it anti-gravity devices. I don't know the correct terminology. What do you think about that? What he said about that? The things he was talking about with U.S. and China.
Yeah. So I did a whole piece on this, and I have like a lot of sources on the drone thing. Let's just get some facts out there. Some facts are that a mayor came out and said there is missing plutonium or uranium, I forget which one it was, missing from a storage container that was found damaged. That's a fact.
Yeah.
These drones are flying everywhere. Okay. We know there's drones flying everywhere because we can see them with our own 2 eyes. Some of the reports ended up being actually commercial aircraft that people were just like, getting in the frenzy of.
Yeah.
But we know that happened. And the type of drones that those were using are the type of drones with massive sensors looking for something. Yeah. I don't know what they're looking for. Was it the uranium? I don't know. I just don't know. But we do know that those 2 things are fact.
Yeah.
The next thing is simultaneously, in the new funding bill, they were seeking a ton of money for a drone program that the U.S. Army had a year ago in a classified request to Congress requested. They didn't get it. Then it was an unclassified request by the DoD again for the new budget. Now, it just so happens to line up, and I'm like, I don't know for a fact if they're tied together, but it just so happens that the two overlap the funding thing. And when did the drone stop? Right after the funding bill was passed.
Right. Well, I'm pretty sure you don't believe in coincidences either. I know I don't, and we talked about that briefly a minute ago with the two incidents that happened on January 1st with the guy down in New Orleans and our guy Matt. I'm not really sure. Here's what I've been watching Sean Ryan for a few years now, and I've seen both of his interviews with Sarah. What was her name? Sarah Adams, I think.
Yeah, the CIA lady.
Yeah, she's real squared away, and she's talking.
They called her crazy.
Huh?
They called her crazy.
Yeah. Well, they wasted no time. If what she was talking about is accurate, my man waited about 3 hours. But here's the thing: you have an open border for 4 years, and over 20 million people have come in. And let me just say this really quickly: if I was down there and I was trying to do what's right for my family, I'm not going to say I wouldn't probably try to come across the border illegally too. I get it. You're trying to take care of your family. That doesn't make it right, but I understand why people are trying to do that. We want to come to America.
Certain people are.
Yeah. The problem is when you let 20 million people or 30 million people come over, don't you think some bad dudes are going to come in? I mean, we know of Sarah was saying she knows of at least 1,500, I think she said, was it Al-Qaeda guys or ISIS guys that are here? I mean, that's what we know of. I mean, how many do we not know of? And so why are people surprised when 3 hours into the new year, something goes boom? I mean, we've had an open border for how long? There are bad actors here. And whether they're going to be, it's called sleeper cells, if you didn't know, people. And I don't know how it works. I don't know if there's a group text or if they get, called one at a time, or if people are just going to start doing things randomly. But this is the new war front, I think.
I think so too. And, some great points were made also on that Sean Ryan podcast about this, where they were talking about, suicide bombers and sleeper cells and ISIS versus Al-Qaeda, and how Al-Qaeda is using ISIS as a front man to do the low level stuff.
Yeah.
The other thing is we know that there were 400 ISIS affiliated people that have been detained at the border over the last 2 or 3 years. We know that for a fact. We know that there was over 1,000 people that were detained at the border that were on a terrorist watch list, many of which were just let go into the continental United States and given like a thing, hey, show up at your court date on this time. We don't know where they are. We know that places like Ilhan Omar's district is the #1 terror recruiting capital of the world. We know which states are getting the mass migrants of these. And we also know that if these are people, like everybody they say is everybody on the left saying that these are people bringing their families, looking for a better life, why is every video of these caravans that I see mostly military age males?
Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah. Military-age men from China, the Middle East. I mean, these aren't just Hispanics, right? This is people from all around the world. And like you said, it's military-age men. What are they doing here? They're not here to, work at your local strawberry farm, I don't think.
Right. And let's go back to the very beginning of this to like debunk all the arguments on this. Okay, let's say every one of these military-age males is not a terrorist. Let's just say that. That's not the case, but let's just say that. Do you realize that most of them are coming here, they're getting jobs under the table for cash, and that cash is leaving the United States of America? Mm-hmm. Anybody with half a brain, with half a wit, with half a consideration for the United States of America and us tax-paying citizens would say, hey, wait a minute, you guys are estimating sending $20 billion tax-free out of the country a year. We would like to recoup some of that money. E-Verify, holding business accountable, something. But the Democrat administration did not do that. And the reason they didn't do that is because they want to manipulate the census data. Getting elected for these people is more important than the safety of the United States and the financial safety of the United States, because when they work here, that is money that is not being kept in the United States. Forget terrorism for a second. Yeah. The financial implications, not to mention it costs us $150 to $200 billion a year. It's bankrupting New York City right now. People can't get hotel rooms in New York because the DHS and the local government's paying for all these hotel rooms, jacking the prices up to $400 or $500 a night. This is unsustainable. And they're talking about a housing crisis now, Scott. Well, who here would like to know why there's a housing crisis? Because if you import 20 million people, they got to live somewhere. And when you're handing out money for these people, like Springfield, Ohio, for Haitian migrants to go to Springfield, Ohio, they're giving them, I don't know, like $3,000 a month or something to go out and rent things. They're pricing American citizens that have lived there their whole lives completely out of the market. And that's why we have a housing crisis in America. And that's why your son's generation can't afford homes when they get out of college.
Well, that's what I was just getting ready to say. All my kids are in their 20s, mid to late 20s, and they can't afford a house yet, and they're worried that they won't be able to. And I think I'm hoping that once Trump gets back in and the economy turns around in a year or two, maybe we'll be okay. But I don't think the left, let's be clear, the left doesn't like America. They don't want our children to have homes. They want them to be dependent on the state. They want them to live in Section 8 housing, right? So they're dependent upon the man, and therefore they're going to get their votes. That's party before country. I mean, that's what you just said a second ago. You know, how did Nancy Pelosi become as rich as she is? I mean, didn't they send Martha Stewart to prison for insider? All these guys do it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. But also, you know, you have places like BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, huge. You know, BlackRock has a $7 to $8 trillion under management. BlackRock has almost double the federal government's revenue, annual revenue under management that they can throw around and that they can push to influence whatever company board they want. They are buying up houses in the double-digit percentage of houses bought in 2023 were by BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, which means there isn't a rental market. And they're driving, and this is how it works. They will buy up huge swaths of land, of homes in a certain area, make them unavailable, drive up the prices, and when they're done, they will dump them all on the market and crater property values in certain areas, and they will profit greatly from it.
Speaking of property, what do you think is going to happen with all the farms that the Chinese have bought? Do you think that's going to be taken back, or how does that work?
Well, I mean, I know some states have already proposed taking them back. I think Sarah Huckabee Sanders in Arkansas. I think Kristi Noem. I know Ron DeSantis has talked about it. But, you know, like I live in Connecticut, and the one thing Deep Blue Connecticut got right is there's no Chinese farmland here, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
So I think that they're going to take it back. I think that, you know, why they're buying it anyway, and we're allowed to, like outside of military bases, I don't know. Like if I need a background check for my gun, you should probably look at a foreign adversary buying military, you know, land right outside of military base, but we don't do that here apparently.
Well, let's talk real quickly about, and this kind of old news, what's your take on the balloon that traversed the whole country? I mean, it turns out now it looks like that we were able to tap into that and get some information as well. I personally would have shot it down before it got to Alaska. What the heck's going on with that thing?
Well, it's just like anything. It's, you know, let's go back to what we know and the lack of coincidences in this world. The Penn Biden Center that Joe Biden had received, I believe, over $50 million from Chinese sources. Okay, that's not for nothing. They didn't give that to them at the benevolence of their heart. Hunter Biden went over to China and picked up $2 billion or around $2 billion in bags of cash for a private equity fund. Mm-hmm. That type of money does not move without Chinese government officials knowing about it and having a reason to do it. What was that money for? Okay, we know that Dianne Feinstein, the late Dianne Feinstein, senator from California, she had a Chinese spy driver. You had Eric Swalwell, Fang Fang. He was sleeping with her for quite some time. Yeah. We know there's been a number of other implicated Chinese spies at high levels of government, not to mention the DOD, the Assistant Secretary of Defense's chief of staff and State Department people have affiliated ties to Tehran. Okay, we are being infiltrated on such a level. So we know that China had those hooks into high-level officials, including Joe Biden. Why? Why was that allowed to traverse what is geographically directly over 13 military installations in America, and then they shoot it down after it gets all the way across? I want to know, what was that conversation? The other thing, too, we know General Milley, when Trump was president, backdoored Donald Trump to speak directly to Chinese counterparts to let them know if Donald Trump was planning something, because they said they were trying to stave off a war. But what they were really doing was giving our adversary a heads up if a pro-America first guy did something.
Yeah. Is he the one that said that he would make the phone call if we were getting ready to hit the nuclear button or
Yes.
something?
Yes.
I mean, is that not, how's that not treason? I mean, he bragged about it.
I don't know. This is the same guy who was like, yeah, just leave the $80 billion of the stuff in Afghanistan for the Taliban. It's like, yes, you know what? Like, and I said this on my show the other night. If I want to buy night vision, Scott, you know this. If I go on like opticsplanet.com and I buy a set of night vision goggles or a night vision scope or thermal or anything like that, that's, by the way, not even as high quality as the stuff we left in Afghanistan. I have to sign a waiver, a legally binding waiver on that website. It's an ITAR that says I will not sell or trade or send this to anybody overseas. This is for my use in America. It's basically a legal commitment that I'm not going to give it to a terrorist.
Yeah.
But yet we left what was like 16,000 pairs of night vision goggles in Afghanistan. Like, great job, guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could go on and on about this stuff, but let's go back for 1 second to the Obama administration. I know you're going to remember this. Some of the audience might not. But let's talk about the Obama administration when they flew. I think it was 2 airplanes full of cash in different.
It's like $8 billion.
Yeah, in different currencies. You know, it wasn't just U.S. dollars; it was euros and the whole thing. They flew that over there. I'm guessing the agency flew that over there and dropped it. What was that? Who was that for? I don't remember. Do you know what that was all about? I can't remember.
Well, yeah, the story was that it was relief on sanctions that we had agreed to lift in exchange for the nuclear program. Because, you know, this is the other thing too. Is like we had this, like Obama and Biden, they all wanted this big nuclear deal with Iran. The problem is the nuclear deal was basically like, hey, you guys aren't doing nukes, right? Oh, no, we're not. Okay, can you self-inspect and just remind us that you're not doing? It's like, yes, let's trust a bunch of terrorists. Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah.
The people who chant "Death to America" on official channels we should trust them unequivocally, Scott.
Yeah, and then also give them money.
Right. So we freed up, under Biden and Obama, we freed up over $100 billion from relieving sanctions on these people. Like, that $100 billion didn't go to like affordable housing or education systems or like, you know, diversity programs. It went to war-ready stuff, like the rockets that were found attacking Israel, like, or the ones that the Houthi rebels are shooting at our ships over in the Middle East. Like, this is all, it's like, you can see this, and this stuff is like available on like based from a 7-second internet search. You can find this out. And yet the people at the State Department, the so-called experts that we were told to listen to for the last, 4 years, and then 12 years before that, those people like can't seem to figure this out. They're like, no. We're working through diplomacy. It's like, diplomacy, my ass.
Yeah. Well, let's think about this. So we can blame Biden, and Biden's got plenty of blame. Don't get me wrong, but like the 8 years Obama was in office, like I think it was during his first inauguration or acceptance speech. Anyway, he said, "I'm going to fundamentally transform America," and everybody clapped. That wasn't good. He was telling us what he was about to do, but in my opinion, that wasn't a good thing. Like, they don't like America. They don't want there to be. They want to be a one world order. This global economy, one world order nonsense. Of course, if you're a Muslim, you want Sharia law everywhere. I just think we're reaping the benefits of what happened a long time ago.
Well, and that's the biggest thing, like the WHO pandemic treaty or stuff that the head of the WHO wants us. Trump's like, I'm out of the WHO.
Yeah.
These guys are turds.
Yeah.
So, which I think is great, but they had this like treaty that would have allowed them to regulate guns in America, and I'm like, yeah, come and get them with your blue helmets and your UN boys. Like, this is not a thing. But that's what they want. They want some global treaty that's going to supersede our Constitution. And I always look at this. This is the problem with the libs too, Scott, is they're always like, we're going to put this policy in place. I'm like, okay, and then what? Like, we're going to ban guns. Okay, and then what? They tried this in Connecticut. Like, I'm one guy like that does not mess with gun laws because it's the fastest way for me to have my entire life destroyed in front of my face, because all it takes is one ATF agent with a bug in his ass to say, hey, you know what? Carl has suppressors. Class 3 item, I want to inspect this. They get a warrant, they come check it, and they can check anywhere in my house. And if I have something that's illegal, I'm going to jail. Even if it wasn't illegal, or even if I didn't know it was illegal, like the 1160 bill, when they just blanket, they were like, yeah, you know what? Anybody who's got an AR-15 needs to register it with the state. And if you didn't do it, like I owned AR-15s from when I lived in Virginia. And when I moved back to Connecticut, I legally purchased in Virginia. When I moved back to Connecticut, it was past the deadline, so I had to get rid of those firearms. Like, I wasn't allowed to bring those firearms back into the state of Connecticut,
Yeah.
which is insane to me because I'm a Navy SEAL. I missed some stupid filing deadline to tell the state that I have something that I bought lawfully uh, while I was on active duty. But you have 68% of law enforcement officers in the state of Connecticut that reportedly didn't comply with that law. And this is the Democrats. It's like they can pass these laws and they can have a judge say, oh, well, you're going to go get them. But like, when you do this, like let's say the WHO treaty, Biden signs onto it, which he wanted to do, and it's like, okay, well, you have to take all the firearms from everybody in the country. Okay, when the Hills in West Virginia start singing "Country Roads," do you think any law enforcement officer is going to want to go in there and take those weapons? They're going to be like, hell no.
No, absolutely not. Well, that's I love the Second Amendment. I love the First Amendment. I think the Second Amendment should probably have been number one, but it doesn't matter. The forefathers got it pretty right. But that's why they don't want us to have guns. That's why they hate the Second Amendment, right? Because it's like, you can say, well, I have a gun because I want to go deer hunting. Okay, whatever. I have my guns, lawfully, by the way, to protect myself against the tyranny, right? I mean, we got in the first revolution over a tea tax, I believe. So, I mean, it's like...
Yeah, 2.5% tax on a breakfast beverage, and we started a war against the most powerful military in the world and won. Like, we crossed the Delaware barefoot in the middle of the night on Christmas to whoop their ass and take our stuff back.
Yeah.
Now, what do I pay? 50% of my paycheck in taxes? Great.
Oh, well, what we fuss about this at my house. You pay all the taxes I pay my taxes out every year, just like you. Property tax, real property tax, the whole thing, sales tax. My check gets taxed, and at the end of the year, I hold my breath, going, I wonder what I'll owe them this year. Like it's just like some Rubik's cube that you can't solve. It's like, oh, you owe $3,500 or you owe $10,000. I never get money back. But if I've paid over and over and over and over again, why am I penalized at the end of the year every year? It's weird.
Well, I make the argument too, like, look, do you ever own your property? No. And if you think I'm wrong, don't pay your taxes for a year and watch them take your property.
Yeah.
I did a little bit on taxes once where I was like, you're taxed on a paycheck, which that paycheck then hits your bank account, which you're then taxed on your property, on your home, on all of your utilities, which are mandated fees within that utility. Then you taxed for your car. You're taxed on your insurance. You're taxed on everything. You've already paid you've already paid taxes on all this money. You're taxed on the road that you drive on. You go through tolls to maintain the roads that you're already taxed to drive on. You're taxed on everything. You're taxed on sales tax to spend it. You're taxed on, anything you buy has some variant of tax. When you go to the gas pump, you have fuel that has another tax on it. And it's at the end of the year, you're sitting there thinking, it's like, well, if that's the case, if I'm paying all this, I'm paying the salaries of millions of bureaucrats. And if I have a question about it, I can't get them on the phone to ask it. And let's say I do my taxes based on the 70,000 page tax code that we have that is so complicated that you actually have to pay a lawyer to do. By the way, you ask the IRS, like, well, how much do I owe this year? Oh, well, you have to figure that out. Oh, really? Well, what happens if I get it wrong? Oh, you go to jail. So if I do that 70,000 page tax code and go through it word for word and do all my taxes linearly based on that entire tax code, I still might go to jail because there's another 50,000 words of associated tax law that has been added by bureaucrats and court cases that was never passed into law by the actual people that we voted in to pass laws that I then have to comply with as well. Otherwise, the IRS, without a warrant, can reach into my bank account and take whatever they think they're owed with no adjudication.
No, it's so hard to articulate how I feel, and I think we both feel the same way. I love my country, and I didn't serve in the military like you did, but I've been a public servant for 30 years almost, and I love my country. But I'm telling you, man, like, it makes me wonder if, like, maybe we are the problem. When I say we, I mean the government. Like, we're not always the good guys. I don't think. It's very disheartening.
Nah, man, and that's the thing is, like, I think there's a lot of people within and there's actually the Milgram experiment that went. I think Yale University did this years ago, and it really encapsulates the power of government. Okay, and this goes, you could look at this, COVID is a case study for this. It's like the Milgram experiment was a bunch of people. They took two people, and I'll try to do this briefly for you. They took two people, and they said, one's a student, one's an actor. They picked names out of a hat. Now, they didn't know this. One of them didn't know this at the time, but the teacher was the original recipient, and the student in the thing was actually an actor. And they separated these, and I would encourage people to go watch the videos of these. It's insane. They separated them by a wall. You could hear through the wall, but you couldn't see through the wall. And the teacher was told to administer questions to the student, which the student was the actor. And if they got the questions wrong, you would apply a level of electric shock. And every time they got it wrong, you'd up the electric shock a little bit more. And eventually, a lot of these people would continue to shock them, and the student would say, "Ow, I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore. I'm in pain." And they kept shocking him. And most people continued to shock him as long as the administrator of the experiment was over his shoulder saying, no, it's okay. I'm responsible. It's okay. You know, this is the deal. They agreed to this. I'm responsible. As long as the responsibility was not on those people, they discovered in that experiment that 80% of people are not capable of independent thought. They are group thinkers and will do as they're told, even if it's hurting someone else. Mm-hmm. And that is the biggest problem. And when you get in the government, like a ton of people in the government are like, I'm in charge because I was told so, and I can just tell you what to do, no matter the morality of it. Forget about it. Yeah. And they just make laws.
Yeah. Well, I think, too, part of the problem is, and not always, but like when you become the director of an agency or a figurehead at any SES level or whatever, you got to have a little politician in you to get that, and that's okay. But because I've known some guys that have been directors and they're really good guys. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, there are some that aren't. But it's almost like these guys got
Cheadle.
It's almost like these guys got beat up at school and had their lunch money taken or never had a prom date, and now they're on an authority, a trip or something. It's weird.
I know a ton of cops, man, in town here, like a ton of cops that I went to high school with, and the toughest guys, the guys who were like, played sports and like actually were successful and stuff like that, they're like the nicest guys in the world. It is the guys who got beat up that are like the worst.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I don't want to drop names, but I used to work with some, and I've seen, I sent Eric a text on the down low, and I gave him some names that he probably didn't know. I was like, hey, pass these to your dad. They're worth a hard look, because they're like legit door kickers that would come in and go scorched earth. Because if we get the wrong guy, when I say we, if the service gets the wrong guy again, it's going to be more of the same, and nothing's going to change.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, man.
Well, listen, I know we got to wrap it up, but right before we wrap it up, I do appreciate your time. Let's talk very briefly. I know we could talk an hour on this, but let's talk very briefly about the two knuckleheads that took pop shots at Trump. Don't you, and we can't get in the weeds on it, we don't have time, but don't you find it odd, because you brought it up a while ago, that we know more about this Green Beret guy in 2 hours than we know about these dudes in 6 months. The one guy, the kid up in PA, what was the kid? Crooks. His house, they said his house looked like it looked like a sterile environment where it was an operating room. Like there was no dirty dishes. 20-year-old kid had no dirty dishes. It was like sterile environment.
No, and if you look at picture of this guy, he doesn't exactly look like a well-kept human being. He looks like a barista you might find at Starbucks, long hair. I don't believe in it. Why did a young kid who doesn't have really a single source of major income, why did he have 3 encrypted phones? Like, I don't even have an encrypted phone. No. Like, I don't have one, let alone 3. Yeah. Like, why was there's so many questions around this stuff. I think when Trump gets in, he's going to get to the bottom of it.
I certainly hope so. I know Eric and Don were fired up, as they should have been. And we had
someone shot at their dad.
Yeah, I think they had a little right to be upset. But anyway, Carl, I know it's a Saturday, and I appreciate your time, and I really appreciate you coming on, man.
Hey, thanks, Scott. I appreciate it.
Okay, buddy.